The future is coming at us faster and faster. And when I say the future is coming faster and faster, I mean it, and you can feel it. I know that you've had the same reaction. Our guest today, Brent Miller Jr., has been in the film production business, and he is a Christian making Christian films, and I want you to welcome him right now, Brent Miller Jr. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much, Gary.
It is always good to have you, and you know, we go back a ways, and we're going to be talking about Decoding the Future. By the way, this is 7 DVDs, and all 7 DVDs are absolutely packed with information, and the world needs information today. You know it, I know it, and particularly the Christian world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's such a lack of biblical understanding today, like there's never been in the history of America.
And it seems to be getting more widespread. That is, and prophecy is not taught. It's thought to be confusing. It's thought to break up congregations, like a sure way to turn various factions in a congregation against each other is to begin to teach Bible prophecy. And people will get confused, and they will get angry, and someone will leave the church. So we just don't teach prophecy.
Right. Right, and there's such an incredible danger in that, being that most theologians will say that about 1/3 of the entire Bible is prophetic. What pastors and churches are doing is gutting 1/3 of the Bible. I mean, they're just getting rid of it. You'd think, you know, everything in the Bible is important to study, but when you remove prophecy from the Bible, you remove the very thing that God uses to prove to the world that He is God. And so without prophecy, there's no foundation that the unbelieving world has to prove to them that the Bible is from a divine source, and it can be rationalized and proven with apologetics, which is just using history and rationalizing it, statistics, and so on. And it can absolutely be proven without a doubt that Bible prophecy is absolutely real and Christ is coming back.
Indeed He is, and He's told us that in ever so many different ways. You know, I've got my Bible here open to John 14, and it says, in the words of Jesus, "Let not your heart be troubled." By the way, those are good words for this particular year in which we live. The year 2020, it seems like it's all broken loose. And Jesus says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you." You know, and you think, oh, I needed to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the world lately has been absolutely consumed by fear. And the reason why the world is consumed by just this overwhelming fear is because of really the world has turned its back on God. There's no biblical foundation. And so the world places its hope in the world. And if anything, I would think that this COVID situation globally is a wake-up call to the church to show us how the fragility of the world, that everything that people base their lives on, you know, the financial system, their jobs and everything, it's a house of cards. It can come crumbling down so fast. And the only true hope that we have is in eternal life.
You know, you've been involved in Christian filmmaking for a long time, and from very young to the present date, and it's just picking up speed for you. And this 7-disc course that I'm holding here, Decoding the Future, goes back a long way. In fact, I had a part in it. I was interviewed in several different ways regarding the book of Revelation. And that's pretty current right now. Decoding the Future has been around a while, but when you look at the guidebook that comes with it, it talks about subjects that people really need to hear about. For example, it's talking about the various aspects of the 7 churches of Revelation. And it names each of the churches. It talks about their role, their history. It talks about, most of all, their future prophetic timeline. So you can look at the churches, you can project into the era in which I believe we live right now. And this is just jam-packed with information.
Yeah, what I personally love so much about the Decoding the Future series is that unlike most of everything that's out there that says that looks at the macro view of events in end time prophecy, they'll say, well, this is specifically that, and this event is this thing happening in the news, and then a year later it all becomes out of date, and so you have this continual, these courses where it's more about the opinion of the pastor or the theologian, and not really an overview of Revelation itself. So the Decoding the Future series is really a timeless series as it looks at the first century culture, and it teaches Revelation based on the foundation of what did they think, those in the first century, their culture, their way of life, what was going on in the first century. And shockingly, I mean, we forget, in the American culture here, we think very differently than they did in the Middle East in the first century. We have a very kind of Western view where we want to analyze and define things of, what do things do. But in the first century, they thought, what is something for, as just one of their foundational methods of thinking. So in the book of Revelation, when it describes the beast that's covered in eyes, as Americans, we think, oh, what does that look like? It's like a monster, and it's, we're almost like Greek thinking, right? But the Jews, they understood things very differently. Their initial thought would have been, well, what is that for? What is its purpose? Well, it's all seeing. It sees everything. So the way they viewed the events in Revelation unfold and the true depths of its meaning is so profound that it brings it to life.
And you're absolutely right. In Jewish thought, an eye is wisdom or insight, and, an ear, a horn is thought to project power, so it's a symbol of power.
Yeah.
And the Jews did think that way.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a beautiful example as we go through the 7 churches of Revelation. And even though this is taught in a university setting, this series also, we follow the class throughout Israel and throughout Turkey, and we actually film in the underground tunnels in Jerusalem, and we film in the areas that Revelation talks about, so you can see it. It makes it come alive. For example, in the 7 churches of Revelation, where it speaks of the church of Laodicea, where Christ says, be neither, or be hot or cold, but don't be lukewarm or I'll vomit you or spew you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
We actually film in Laodicea, and we show you what he was referencing. And if I can kind of quickly give this example, is that most churches have taught, and this is this Western viewpoint, that most churches have taught that being hot is to be on fire for the Lord, or to be cold, just make the decision to reject him, but don't be a fence sitter. There's a lot of new anthropological discovery from the first century, and the Decoding the Future presents this as a possibility of what they really thought in the first century. That the Laodiceans, in their mindset and culture, would never have thought be on fire or be cold and reject the Lord, but don't be a fence sitter. That wouldn't make sense to the way they thought. That is a modern, Western, even American view of that. And we're 2,000 years removed. That's a long time from that culture. More likely, what Christ actually meant is that in Laodicea, they brought in hot water from the hot springs only a few miles away, and they actually brought in cold running water from the other way in the valley. They had running hot and running cold water like we do today, modern plumbing. And we film the clay pipes. They actually had, I mean, it's unbelievably advanced. Laodicea was an advanced city.
So they had the creature comforts.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they had public restrooms with actual plumbing that brought waste out of the city. Very, very modern. And people don't understand that the first century was very advanced. And so they understood, their thinking is that cold water had a purpose. It was, it was refreshing. You drank it, right? It was moving water, and so it was healthy. Christ speaks of living water. Living water means it's moving water. It's healthy, it's refreshing. Hot water was therapeutic. They used the hot springs and the hot running water for medicinal purposes, bathing, all these sorts of things. So Christ was saying, be hot or cold, be refreshing or therapeutic, but don't be what? Stagnant. Because if you're lukewarm, you're stagnant water. And stagnant water was death. It was poison. You don't drink that.
Being stagnant could be one description of the modern church.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of spiritual reference to what Christ was warning us about.
We have a little bit of a preview of Decoding the Future. Let's run that, and just so you can get an idea of the style of this film.
Welcome to an overview of Decoding the Future, a life-changing journey through the book of Revelation. Decoding the Future will reveal a groundbreaking new understanding of the future events and prophetic timeline leading to the end of our age, according to the ancient records. To decode the future, you'll join host Jay McCarl during a live class as you explore the book of Revelation chapter by chapter. Each lesson provides unprecedented depth in understanding the original writings by incorporating a clear picture of the ancient customs, laws, and belief systems of the world over 2,000 years ago. But this is only the beginning. You'll also follow Jay as he embarks to the Middle East, revealing where the prophecies were first received millennia ago. In addition, you'll hear from a panel of theologians and prophecy experts, including Gary Stearman and Cade Hawkins from the Prophecy Newswatch organization, to discuss and reveal even deeper insight. Of course, more discoveries are being made with each passing year by teams of archaeologists around the world. Therefore, as a Decoding the Future member, you'll receive free lifetime access to the online members community. Here you will receive new course videos, interviews, and news that will further expand your understanding of the end-time prophecies as they are discovered around the world. Also, you can post questions and search through in-depth responses for each topic presented in the course. The complete Decoding the Future course also comes with the exclusive Prophecy Timeline booklet. This guide outlines several popular views of the last days and presents several sequences of future events to watch for according to the ancient writings. The Decoding the Future course is an in-depth journey like no other. No matter your background, denomination, or belief system, this complete course will open your eyes to a world you never knew existed and will provide the most compelling view ever revealed that the prophecies are true and unfolding before our very eyes. For the first time, you can truly understand the warnings of Revelation through the eyes of the ancient world, the way it was always meant to be understood. Get the Decoding the Future course today.
Well, I think you can see that there's a lot there. And in fact, in these 7 DVDs that I have here, we're talking about a full course in, I guess, church history, in archaeology, in biblical studies. I mean, it's all put together in a beautiful package.
Yeah, it's to this day, the Decoding Future series is still one of the most popular Revelation studies in the U.S. And churches, pastors are sharing this with their congregations. It's become a church study. I mean, it's separated into 7 segments, and so churches are doing like a 7-week program based on Decoding the Future, and even online at the website, you can print out additional, all free, additional lessons and discussions, and print out that booklet, additional copies of it to hand out in a group study. And that's really what we want to promote, is people to have group studies with their friends and families and churches with us.
One thing that's happening right now, and I think we need to have a little conversation about this. One thing, Brent, that's happening right now is people are looking at the world. They're looking at China, they're looking at the Middle East, they're looking at what's going on in Europe and America, and the disease factors and stability, stability factors that we're encountering right now. And they immediately say, oh, prophecy is being fulfilled, like the seals of Revelation are already being opened. And we get a lot of that these days, and that's a bit premature. You might be congratulated on your enthusiasm, but not on your accuracy, because the seals have not been opened yet. And I think Decoding the Future would provide you with a very systematic approach.
Right. I think there's a huge misunderstanding, even amongst within the church, that there, are one or two signs. There's a super sign that kind of indicates, that the very end is upon us. But the Bible prophecy has a brilliant structure to it, from Genesis through Revelation. There's nothing like it in the world. Yeah. 2,500 prophecies all together in this perfect tapestry, this domino effect where one affects another, And even through the end of the age, there are certain events that must occur in a certain sequence where you'll know if you're within the seals. You'll know if you're in the tribulation. It's not up to guessing. And the Lord never provided us information where things are truly a mystery.
And I think that all the guests that you interviewed for Decoding the Future, all of them, and myself included in this, were eager to teach systematically, not jumping ahead, not saying this could happen, this might already have happened, but rather giving you a systematic approach so that you can calm down, look at the facts, go back to your own Bible, read your Bible, and say, so that's what that means. And I think this is very valuable in that respect.
Yeah, it'll give anybody who wants real discernment of what is valid prophetically and what is being taken out of context. Yeah. It paints a very clear picture. So when some of these sensationalized things come up and a lot of these claims are made in this vacuum of prophecy, because the church isn't teaching it, so you've got so many different sensationalized views popping up every day. This is a solid foundation that you can know really what's valid and what isn't as we progress to the end.
Having said that, and having talked with Brent, I know that he is anything but lukewarm. He's excited about what's happening, and he's driven, and he's a young guy with a lot of energy, and he's got big plans, and he's putting together information in such a way that it will affect today's church and strengthen today's church, and I think that is your calling.
Yeah, our primary goal in Ingenuity Films is not to simply edify the church. That is a big goal, to bring education into the church, to bring prophecy back into the church, but it's also to reach the non-believing world. And even the United States, the terrifying trends that we're seeing, people are falling away from the church. I mean, millennials these days, 1 out of 4 of them are now non-religious or atheist, and those numbers are exploding. This is a terrifying state where Christianity is collapsing right before our very eyes. And so our goal is to use apologetics, statistics, history, rational conclusions, to prove to the non-believing world in a way they can understand why the Bible has validity and why prophecy has validity, rather than just saying, the Bible says this, just believe it. The average person, non-believing person out there, can't grasp that kind of rationale. And so like Paul did in the first century, the Apostle Paul, where he reasoned in the synagogues and how history, prophecy, rationalizing. Today, the church, we also need to be rationalizing with the non-believing world in a way they can understand. And that often means going back to the very worldviews and the foundations of what they believe. And that's primarily what we do.
And Brent, when I see what you've done and think back across the years and the effect that something like Decoding the Future has had, you can really see the fruit being born. I mean, you watch and time passes and things happen. In addition to what Brent was just saying, there's another element here, and that's the element of being human. Nobody likes a dull storyteller. You start looking at your watch. Is there any way I can get out of here? And you have the gift. You and the people that work together put together something that pulls you along. And I'm thinking of Before the Wrath here. I'm holding a copy of that. It's filmed by Brent, that it has just absolutely broken records everywhere. And it has launched in many places an excitement within the church, which is the best thing you can do today.
Yeah, we were absolutely taken back to how God is using this film within the church. I mean, the goal before the wrath was to get prophecy back into the church, which this day and age, like, I don't have to be the one to tell you, that's almost an impossible feat. You know, I mean, we've all been trying to do this for years, but just through the grace of God, before the wrath has finally penetrated the church, because it also coincides with the COVID pandemic, and I think it was God's perfect timing,
right,
where for the first time in years, we are seeing pastors from all sorts of denominations actually watch before the wrath, and they're beginning to share it with their congregations. And we do see an uptick where pastors are beginning to bring prophetic discussion back into the church where they have previously marginalized it. We're blown away. Let's
look at the Before the Wrath trailer, and this illustrates, I think, the prime aspect of this film. It gets you right here.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith, that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
Most people don't believe that Jesus is coming back. What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real?
Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here.
The Bible talks about it as being a mystery, but why does the rapture have to happen? What's the point to it all? A Galilean would have understood that perfectly.
They are the key to everything. I'm just so stunned. I never thought I would see this in my lifetime.
This is the most profound discovery in human history.
From his promise made through wine at the Last Supper, to why the world cannot know the day of his return, we were chosen to preserve the truth until the end of days. So even if we are not spared from death, others can unveil what we knew and believe.
This discovery proves that he is coming back.
Well, yeah, it's one thing to didactically teach, and by the way, there's a need for that. You need to learn dates, times, places, and verses and how they fit together. But it's another thing to touch the heart. You've got to, dramatize. You've got to bring some excitement. And when you look at, for example, Before the Wrath, and I've seen people watch this film and be moved by it, they'll say, that's the first time I ever understood the significance of a cup of wine.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah, it's like the Apostle Paul. I mean, the first thing he did was look for common ground, of who he was speaking to. That's why, we often hear about the story in Athens where he brings up the story of the unknown God. Well,
right.
why would that be his immediate go-to? Because that builds a bridge of communication. That's the common ground with the pagan Athens he's relating to. And in the church, we forget to do that with the non-believing world. We want to tell them what we know, but we forget to think, what is it that they need to know and understand? And these films are highly effective with the friends and family members that reject the Bible.
And the thing about the work that Brent does and the work that we're doing here at Prophecy Watchers is to take that factor out of the teaching of Bible prophecy that says, oh, you know, people have taught that for years, and you kind of cover your mouth and laugh politely and walk away. It's prophecy is beneath me. You know, I've heard they used to teach that 50 years ago, and then several scholars have discovered that that's just worthless, so we're not going to study it anymore.
Right.
You've been there and done that.
Absolutely. I think we forget the bigger picture of the prophetic timeline, that it's been unfolding for thousands of years, that even in our own lifetimes, it's a drop in the bucket on the prophetic calendar. I mean, before the coming of John the Baptist, I believe it was 400 some odd years before there was even a prophet, you know, on the face of the planet. That's generations of people coming and going with no prophets, no prophecy. And they could have just as easily said, well, where are the prophets? Where are the prophecies? Right. And then all of a sudden it picks right back up where it left off.
You know, he could happen. And when I say he could happen, I mean when he does happen, he is an event. We tend to kind of soft pedal the absolute truth of the Bible that Jesus Christ, our Lord, is God. And when he moves, everything moves with him. Your whole universe will be changed in a twinkling of an eye. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're waiting for that.
Yeah, we need to be a prepared bride, waiting for the groom, and the church has forgotten that. So it's time to get back into that and to wait and to watch. I would urge everybody to, you know, get together as a group and watch this and share it, because time is short, and I mean the Lord's coming back.
It'll happen. It'll happen when we least expect it, and he's coming soon. You know, I just can't help saying that. By the way, Decoding the Future, a full 7-disc course, I should say, is unique. It covers Revelation and the churches in a way that you won't find anywhere else. You go back to your own Bible with understanding. We're offering Decoding the Future for your gift of $79.95, and with that, we're going to also send you this movie, Before the Wrath. It has been an amazing movie. People have gone to see it, and they come back. They're weeping. You must see this. Decoding the Rapture package. Well, Brent, we're just out of time right now. A lot more to talk about, but thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Brent Miller Jr., I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.